Second. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another exciting session of IIoT India Digital Connect Series. This DigiCon series is aimed at addressing the needs and challenges of the manufacturing industry in today's time and sharing the experiences and learnings within the industry. The topic for today's discussion is optimizing productivity with robotic process automation and AI for manufacturing industry. Now, without much further ado, I would like to go ahead and introduce our panelists. I want to start off with our moderator for today, Mr. Sharad Nigam, Vice President for Strategic Growth and Smart Operations with Hitachi. Sharad is currently responsible for rapid transformation through strategic growth initiatives, driving new business incubation and driving commercial acceleration of Hitachi's innovative and cutting-edge solutions and end-to-end services across OT, IT, and product systems in India and APAC. Thank you for joining us. Our next panelist today is Mr. 𝗵𝗵𝗴𝗵𝗀, Vice President for Industry Automation Business for Schneider Electric. With approximately 3 decades of field experience, all throughout the fields of drives and automation, he brings a wealth of experience in the field of energy savings, power quality, controls and automation, and recently has been instrumental in leading Schneider Electric approach to IIoT with Industry 4.0. Thank you for joining us today. Our next panelist, Mr. 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗵𝗵𝗺, Vice President and Head Smart Manufacturing Technology, Reliance Industries Limited, is currently leading the Smart Manufacturing Technology initiatives at Reliance Industries Limited. He is focusing digital transformation, IIoT, robotics, productive and prescriptive analytics in manufacturing. And he has also worked in continuous manufacturing operations in downstream O&G, chemical industries for process optimization, automation, IT services. Thank you for joining us today. Next, we have Mr. 𝗤𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗀, General Manager and Head IoT and Cloud Practices, Bosch. With over 2 decades of experience in automotive engineering and the IT domain, contributing to software and product development, program management, and delivery management. 𝗤𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗀 heads the cloud and OT practices for 𝗖𝗵𝗂𝗶𝗆. His current area of focus is to deliver full-stack IoT and cloud solutions. Thank you for joining us. Our next panelist is Mr. Krishna Ramachandran, Managing Director at Accenture. Prior to this, he was the Global Head of Record to Report and Robotic Process Automation Finance at Philips in their Global Finance team. Welcome to the panel today, sir. Finally, we have Mr. 𝗤𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗀𝗃, Chief Information Officer, Daimler India Commercial Vehicle. 𝗤𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗀 was promoted as the youngest executive in Daimler globally to serve as the Chief Information Officer for Daimler India Commercial Vehicles in Chennai. He worked on topics related to process automation, Leadership 2020, and M&A strategy for Daimler globally. It is an honor to have the industry veterans like you all on the panel today. I now request our audience to take a very quick poll so that our panelists know you better and can streamline the discussion. The poll is on your screens right now, and scroll along and select the most appropriate option, and do not forget to submit your poll. We have received an enormous number of questions and queries from all of you present in the audience, and our panelists will address them during and after the discussion. You can also choose to upvote a question that has been already asked by someone else that will help us to prioritize. Any questions which remain unanswered can be posted on our IIoT India DigiCon Series interchange platform. Few people are still left to submit their poll. Just scroll along and choose the answer. Okay. So here is a quick summary of what the audience thinks of the questions that were asked in the poll. So 45% of the audience thinks that they are struggling to handle the back office work. And 41% people in the audience see their high implementation cost as one of the biggest obstacles in adopting process automation. And it's actually a tie where 41% of the audience believe that inability to prioritize potential RPA initiatives is another obstacle for adopting process automation. 45% of audience believes that the developing of internal talent with formal training programs is one of the biggest problems in the RPA talent. And 45% organizations are finding it hard to develop the internal talent with formal training programs. So with that, I would let the panel be open to Mr. 𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗀. Mr. 𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗀, what are your thoughts on the answers to these questions? Over to you, Mr. 𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗀.
Thank you and good morning, and thanks for inviting. I'm very happy to have such kind of eminent panel, and I'm seeing the result of poll, which seems very relevant, and thanks to the audience for providing that insights. I'm happy that many of the questions we'll be covering today with this kind of panel we have. So I have noted down those points, and I'll highlight during the discussion to bring it out, especially on the RPA adoption, the kind of leadership and the approach you need to adopt RPA. We'll also talk about the cost, because I saw somebody, a good response on being, expensive. And in terms of how to build the internal talent, we'll cover them all. So thanks, Mr. Sharma, once again. In terms of, to set the context, I'll just talk about a couple of sentences from what Peter Drucker had said, because we are talking about AI and RPA. It makes sense to remember those words. We know only two things about the future. It cannot be known, number one. And second, it will be very different from what exists now and from what we expect. And these two sentences makes a lot of, they make a lot of sense. And the development of technology actually have tried to solve these puzzle. Modern business is full of unpredictability. As you can see, what is happening due to pandemic, or even before that, when we have the supply chain being very complex. And it is all about making the intelligent decisions and executing it efficiently. So we are talking about two things, and I'm glad that today's agenda is a powerful combination of two technologies which are directly helping in these two aspects. Moreover, we have eminent panelists with us representing consulting, solution providers, and the industry itself. And being from Hitachi, I fortunately represent all three. Prior to Hitachi, I was with Accenture, and prior to Accenture, I was with industry. So I bring a small element of all the three, and we all together will try to bring a collective perspective to make it a very constructive and interactive session. With that, I would like to share briefly about the agenda today. We will have individual perspective for almost 3 to 4 minutes from each panelist. Then we'll start the panel discussion for almost 35 to 40 minutes. And towards the end, we'll cover the questions which were already posted, and we'll pick some from the discussion itself. And I'm excited to start with giving my perspective by being in industry, by being in as a solution provider, and then in Hitachi as a consulting partner as well. As most of you know, Hitachi was recently announced as one of the top 30 globally most innovative companies in the world. And since inception of Hitachi in 110 years back, we have been working across technologies, but I'm really glad that AI and RPA has been a significant part of this journey in last 60 years. We started very early in this game, and many of you may not be aware, but we have our own language of AI, which is called 𝗏, which is a versatile language using which we have been developing solutions internally in our own industry and plants and other functions. And with the help of our global digital business, we have been expanding these solutions to the world as well, to our clients, to our partners. Briefly talk about how Hitachi has been able to sustain this kind of reputation, this kind of development. And if you see, out of those 30 companies, probably one or one of few are there which are so old. Otherwise, many of those are very young companies. So there are two aspects to it. One is that when we pick any technology to work on, we treat the value with respect to three aspects. One, social impact. Second, environmental impact. And third, economical impact. So we consider building solutions and use cases across these. And that's how we call it as social innovation business. Whatever business we are into, whether it is, like you said, IT, OT, and digital, combining all that, how it impacts on these three aspects is the prime motto. The second aspect, which makes us proud and makes us sustainable, is that we work on the infrastructure to make it sustainable. So I will briefly talk about both of these aspects. One is creating value by use cases across these aspects, and second, how to make or how to build enablers to make it sustainable. So quickly coming to the first one, when we talk about social value, we have implemented AI in education sector, where we have implemented solving problem of fight cyberbullying in Japanese school. We're working on putting AI for safety and surveillance. Also, we are working on building a logical dialogue in Japanese, wherein AI-based platforms helps in building the opinion from different languages and provides that solution. I'm also happy to share that globally we have done so far more than 65 projects across 15 sectors. I'm not talking about small projects, but projects which have one of these three values. When we talk about economic values, we have implemented it in the supply chain, whether it is supply chain optimization for retail and inventory management, whether it is developing new skills for operators working on the ground, whether it is predicting quality well in advance for the product which is going to come out and make operator more equipped with taking intelligent decisions. When it comes to supporting even shipping companies with AI, wherein it is helping captain to decide route and speed to save some fuel and also make it optimized efficiency. When it comes to environmental value, we have implemented AI on water plant, detect water leakage, and also to hospitality. For example, waste management in a hospital was another use case. The second aspect which makes it sustainable is the infrastructure. So we have developed IoT ready controllers, which makes it easy. We have our own Hitachi cloud acceleration platform, which makes it sustainable. And we have our own 𝗡𝗵𝗴𝗵𝗆, using which we can make AI models very effectively and efficiently. So these are the two aspects in Hitachi we have been successfully adopting, and using these two aspects, we have been successfully doing projects not only for us but also for our customers. With that context and with that introductory view of Hitachi, I would like to request Mr. Chandrasekhar to share his perspective. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Ksharat. In the automation spectrum, RPA addressed the process-driven automation, where it's about doing, which can be automated, whereas AI/ML builds on the data-driven automation, what you can call as thinking part of automation. Deep learning pioneer Andrew had compared AI to 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗍𝗍's harnessing of electricity, which was a breakthrough technology on its own, and that revolutioned dozens of industries like cooking, lighting, and the powering, and the communications, and so on. Similarly, we are looking at RPA and AI that could be applied to any industry. If data is oil, manufacturing is Saudi Arabia, which means the reports say that more than 1,100 petabytes of data is likely to be generated from the manufacturing space alone. Just for information, 1 petabyte is 1,024 terabytes. The government, media, communications, they follow manufacturing. So the industrial AI is about applying the technologies for artificial intelligence to the challenges that come with complex industrial operations. So one can leverage RPA, big data, cloud, and machine learning technologies to enhance the quality of the products by optimizing the manufacturing operations at their plants. So the rapid advancements in the big data technologies have revolutionized the way the data is collected and analyzed in plants. Today, using deep learning techniques, we apply AI to various manufacturing processes. Even at Bosch, we also have a manufacturing company where we have more than 200 plants are there across the world, where we have automated process like optical inspection. This is completely automated. Anomaly detection, root cause analysis, or even production scheduling, which enable us or any manufacturing firm to provide the customers with the highest quality of products. So broadly, if I segregate the benefits of AI, it's in the area of continuous improvement, cycle time reduction, defects and rework reduction, capacity optimization, and plant logistics, and also supply chain. But let's not forget that it not just enables operational efficiency, but it also can enable organizations to come up with innovative business models, where your value that you create to your customers, how do you capture, and how do you deliver could be completely different from what you are doing now. So this could lead to growth in your own portfolio of products and services that you offer, and a completely transformational innovation that could come up with completely a different type of offering or product and services that you could envisage and then offer to your customers. In my view, AI is not just key to competitive advantage anymore. It is the prerequisite of survival in many industries going forward.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks,
Chandra. Absolutely. And I like the phrase, if data is oil, manufacturing is Saudi Arabia. That's wonderful. In fact, I also agree that manufacturing is being seen as a leading industry, and whatever we do, whatever we adopt is seen as a benchmark in many of the cases. So appreciate your views. Can we move to Mr. Singhal now to share his perspective?
Thank you very much, Sharad, and with the perspective from Mr. Chandrasekhar also, and the context right set by you, I will take it forward, talking about Industry 4.0 revolution, what it is all about, what it talks. It is talking about machines, they're getting augmented with web connectivity and connected to a system that can visualize the entire process and help the decision makers to take a known decision, an analyzed decision. That's what it is helping in ensuring that the advantage of IIoT are well taken into industries and manufacturing companies, which help them to do more with less. Effectively, we are looking at the lower cost of ownership and the added revenues for the manufacturing segment. That is the main aim for a business person, for a manufacturing organization, for an industry. They would like added revenues, and that is where IIoT, AI comes into picture. I was going through some of the reports from McKinsey also, which talks about efficiency improvement, employee empowerment, downtime reduction, predictive maintenance. These are the need of the hours with different attributes of Industry 4.0, which can be added into this particular thing. So now with COVID coming in and the stages where we are still in between the COVID stage, we can't say we're out of COVID, the need of AI has become much more imperative for the industries. And people are shifting more from physical to digital. And that is where we are looking at an exponential rise in the AI market as we get forward and look forward for manufacturing industry to take it in. So Industry 4.0 and the AI is going to drive a lot of revolution for the coming time. I will touch upon 5 imperatives, the 5 drivers, I would say, digital disruptions, which we believe that the AI-based RPA process automation is going to help and is going to be driven into the industry. The first one of that is IIoT, which is IT plus OT convergence. We all have been hearing about it. One good thing to understand, this IIoT market is growing 4 times faster than the standard market of automation. And we're expecting this to have more than 10 times of the devices connected by 2021. It is going to help us in optimizing the production and significantly reduce the downtimes. Second one, which is pretty important, is AR, augmented reality. And this market is growing by more than 40% CAGR. It is empowering the employees with significant engagement and faster decision making. Third one, as rightly said Mr. Chandrasekhar also, is big data. Talking about data. That is something which is helping in each and every aspect of the industry, whether it's tracking, tracing, time to market, improving the operational efficiencies, and advanced analytics. With the fourth disruption of AI, which is plant and process efficiency improvement, it is going to club together and yield more and more production. And not to forget the fifth one, which some of the people have pointed out in their survey also, is cybersecurity. When we are transmitting data from one place to another place, how secure the data is. And with cybersecurity, the next thing which is coming in the same is how can we trust the data? So trusting the data and securing the data, they are becoming very important, and many companies are investing a lot in having the data secured right from the collection point. So AR plus IIoT is going to run the increased production basis for the plants. When we talk about efficiency improvements, productivity improvement, compliances, faster speed to market, these things are going to get driven. And we look forward for, from Schneider side, right from the controller to the edge control to apps and analytics, to be entirely encapsulated in one segment, which is called EcoStructure, whether it is for plant, whether it is for buildings, whether it is for machines. That EcoStructure is the element which is combining all product, process, people, and data together and ensuring that it is helping in yielding a better result at the output. One thing which I find as a concern is the capability of the workforce and a right mix of combination of people with the experience of process and people with a digital experience. These two things have to be combined together. We cannot be heavy on one side. And this combination is what we would look forward for the machine manufacturers and from the plants to look at it. And the last thing which I would like to talk about is today, the adaptation of IoT in the industries is a bit slower in India. Reason being the trust and speculations regarding the ROI. And the forum in which we are sitting now, we would like to address more and more concerns and questions and build the trust of manufacturing industries over implementation of AI into their process plants and helping them understand how the ROIs can be faster. Back to you.
Thank you so much. I think you touched upon many very important aspects like adoption. And one of the reasons is the lack of trust on ROI. So we'll have more questions, Mr. Singhal, with you on that. And also the cyber security and security of data. I think that is very important aspect. So we'll have more discussion around it. Thanks for sharing your views. Let's move to our third panelist, Mr. 𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗺. If you can share your perspective on these technologies and adoption.
Yeah, well, good morning, everyone. I would like to focus a bit on RPA, Robotics Process Automation, in the services area, largely in F&A, finance and accounts, supply chain, procurement, HR, and those kind of areas where I have spent considerable amount of time. One of the key learnings of running RPA programs in large scale across functions and across geographies over many years was we started the whole program with a clear intent of ROI, right? Which means save money and reduce headcount and so on and so forth. And the other benefits of RPA was possibly lost and not realized in good time, which are like real-time data, right? Quality of data, ability to turn it around much faster, right? Much faster. And also the ability to create digital data or digital assets, which were earlier non in digital form. So therefore, you're getting ready for the next journey of NLP, ML, and AI. So therefore, one is able to start off with creating digital data, which today was not available, right? So there are some benefits of RPA which is not there. So that was not really highlighted, and that's important to put it in perspective. The second perspective is many times when you did the ROI calculation or benefits calculation, we did not consider the incremental cost that IT would incur, like concerns like some people raised on security and data privacy, cyber security. The additional layers of firewall and other effort that IT would need to put in, so the extra cost that comes in, or technology monitoring, right? Command center and stuff like that was not initially budgeted. So the costs were actually increasing. So therefore the payback kind of got delayed from what it was earlier. So these are two clear positives and negative, I would say, that was not considered. The second piece, which is my pet topic, is we jumped into this technology bandwagon without setting the underlying processes right, or the underlying people right. From a consulting background that I spent many years in Big Four as well as here, I would like to talk about people, process, and technology. And then we talk about monetization of what we want to do. So everyone wanted to sell the concept of cost saving and automation and so on and so forth, and jumped into technology. Whereas the underlying processes were very often broken or non-standard by geography, by legal entity, or by location, and so on and so forth. And therefore, we were using RPA to patch, or technology to patch it, or put band-aids. So we are doing one for a factory, one for another location, one for one office, one for another legal entity. So the same process or sub-process had multiple RPAs running in different places. So we didn't focus on cleaning up the processes and making them standard, right? That was a big learning. The other piece is on the people, right? And clearly, when we do automation and we lose people, it's just like when you shift people from your home location to shared service location, you lose a lot of tribal knowledge and talent, right? And same thing happens when you lose people and you get into technology. And people in technology who are coding the RPA or creating those bots do not understand the process as much. So there's a bit of a segregation in terms of knowledge. And then we lose the people who know the process, right? And therefore, I would actually recommend we start with people first, which means you upskill your existing people, especially those who have significant processing knowledge, knowledge of the controls, knowledge of the upstream process, knowledge of the big picture of the process. Train them into technology, create those techno-functional resources, create them first and use a large part of them to drive your technology and change. Maybe it will delay your program by 3 to 6 months, but then what happens is you're retaining the process knowledge, you're upskilling your people, positive social message, right? And you're also kind of hedging yourself against the risk of the IT coding guys or configuration guys and the process guys being divorced from each other, right? So I would rather focus on those people. Then once you start your automation journey, invest in process standardization. The whole 𝗤𝗏 methodology, you can Google and see, which is elimination, simplification, standardization, and then automation. So re-question, there's an opportunity for you to re-question, does this process have any relevance? Maybe in the historical context, you had 5 people approving, right? You had a process flow which was manually done. You needed those 5 approvals. In a digital flow where you can use analytics and go back, right? People spoke about data and analytics. You can go back and analyze it. You do not necessarily need so many approvals. So those can be eliminated. So that is a waste which can be cleaned up. Processes can be standardized across locations. Now, this standardization and simplification of the process could take you anywhere between 3 to 12 months, or maybe even longer, depending on the size of the organization. But what happens by that is the time is well spent and you're ready, right? It's like getting the person ready for technology, right? It's like your 4-year college curriculum to make you an engineer, right? You need to get the person ready. So you get the process ready, you get the people ready, you get the process ready, then you go and automate. And then you get big bangs, right? The ROI is very different because the same bot can run throughout the day, throughout the week, for different locations because it's highly standard. You can move people around between areas because the process is standard, right? So learning from several years of doing this, I would strongly encourage and recommend we do the people agenda first, then the process standardization and simplification, and then go into automation, right? That's what I would recommend. In automation, RPA, AI, ML, various tools, right? Including your homegrown tools like Excel, right? Or Visual Basic, plus your ERPs are all available. So please explore all the tools and use one that is most suited in terms of not only speed and cost, but also in terms of sustainability, right? Or error rate. So that's my my take on RPA. And over to you, Sharad. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think you bring a very comprehensive perspective when an organization first start thinking to adopt. And I like the the comparison in terms of we spent 4 years to make an engineer, and then only he or she is launched to do something on the ground, right? So it takes time. It's a journey, and a well-aware approach of downstream processes. The impact of process is very important, along with the people and capability. So great thoughts, Mr. Krishna. I'd quickly ask Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗿𝗀 to share his real-life experience now, and we'll then move to Mr. Pereira. Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗿𝗀, I think you're on mute. Can you just unmute yourself?
Yeah, sorry, I was unmuted. Thank you. And thanks, Mr. Sharad, and thanks to my the panelists for giving their perspective, which is really useful for our situation. If I would like to talk about my perspective, since it is I am in manufacturing domain, so I'll talk about the manufacturing things. Yeah. And if you see that manufacturing is a vital component of our overall economy and the wellness of the people. And if you look at the percentage contribution of manufacturing to the total percentage of the GDP, there is a clear trend of we see that world manufacturing contribution to the percentage of the GDP is continuously decreasing. It was decreasing since 1995 to till date. It was decreasing from 17.5 to 15.5. And for India, this is almost the similar trend, and the numbers are also almost similar. And now, to increase the contribution of manufacturing to the total GDP, we need to increase more value to manufacturing itself. And it was seen historically that whenever there is a slump or stagnation in the manufacturing productivity, industrial revolution happened. And during the first and third industrial revolution, it has been seen that the technology adoption added immense value to manufacturing. And in the present scenario also, there is a dire need of manufacturing productivity improvement and the transformational technologies like IIoT, AI, RPA, and those technologies are showing very promising role. And if you see in last the 4 and 5 years, the manufacturing companies are increasingly adopting these technologies. And we in India also, we are in a very at inflection point of adoptions of these technologies, though the present pandemic situation decelerated the adoption process. And however, there is a requirement of speeding of the adoption immediately after the pandemic to make the accelerated gain, and such that we are not losing the recent years gain. And in this discussion, we are all discussing about these technologies and how these things are being implemented in manufacturing.
Yeah.
And that's all we'll be discussing in the next the 1 hour. And thanks to Mr. Sarwad once again.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Very important point, and I think you know, a broader view of what is happening to manufacturing globally in India and how it relates to technology. So I really appreciate your view that it is, and there are reasons why it is decreasing. I mean, unless they see value, the entrepreneurs are not coming into manufacturing. They are going into probably service market or customer facing processes where they see more opportunities. So it's all about creating value from manufacturing, and that is why we are talking about adopting these technologies. And we'll touch upon the ROI thing in a short while as well. So thanks once again, Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗿. Mr. Pereira, your views, please.
Yeah, I think the other panelists have really summarized this quite well. And I'll take a perspective from my industry, and also I'm referring to the auto industry, and also more specifically towards Daimler India commercial vehicles. So for us, when we sort of adopt a technology, I've been a very strong advocate where I say it's a problem first approach, not a technology first. Yeah. You understand and identify what is the problem, and then bring in the technology that is relevant or required to fulfill or resolve that problem. Why I say that is technology is evolving. Yeah, you talk about ROI. If you start investing long-term in a technology, in about 18 months time, it's redundant. So if your ROI is not in 18 months, then you've invested in the wrong thing, right? Then when you look at from a organization perspective, there are multiple different verticals having different levels of processes. Yeah, and not everything can be tagged by the ROI. There is process efficiencies or process re-engineering that will make your workforce or your employees more efficient, which cannot be quantified sometimes. You can look at the time saved, etc., but not everything can be tagged. So therefore, when you look at the problem and you start defining your technology stack, be it RPA, be it AI, whatever the technology is, first think about the bigger picture and think about the sustenance. Then think about the adoption and change management that needs to come. Right? I think Mr. Krishna touched upon it very, very well, because again, you have the people element. You can throw out technologies or solutions, but do you really measure how it's getting adopted beyond just the ROI, right? And then talk about sustenance. If the organizations or manufacturing industry or any company expects one department to roll out technology, you will never be sustainable. Why? Is because, like I said, technology is moving faster. We live in a very unpredictable world. And if you look at it, you have to have the entire organization upskilled, and you need to enable them. So the way I look at it is, we as the IT organization, we bring in the technology that's needed. We look at it from a long-term and short-term perspective. We build the foundation, be it infrastructure, be it governance. I think one of the panelists touched upon data security, right, and cybersecurity, but governance is also important, especially when it comes to RPA and other technologies. Yeah, if you don't govern this, you don't have the right operating models, everything will fail. So build the right foundation, understand where your processes are lacking, and then think of bringing the technologies first. Second is enable the business to become self-sufficient, which means IT can introduce the technology, IT can help adopt one or two, but bring in a train the trainer concept, because then you will be twice as fast, right? Have business champions or digital champions in every business organization that's able to, one, not only adopt, but in the future recreate these RPA bots. And this is how you upskill most of the organization and your people. And that's when you start seeing the maximum benefit of all the technologies or the industrial revolution that's coming can be reaped off. So very, very important to understand, think about the bigger picture, right? Think about the governance, and also keep in mind the run cost. I think that is very, very important, because otherwise you calculate your ROI and the business case, but you forget the added on run cost that you bring, and the complications in terms of managing all these technologies, because now we are living in a world where there's petabytes and petabytes of just IoT data lying around just within your factories, right? Forget about connected vehicles or connected, getting customer data, but just within your factory itself, you get a lot of data. So if you don't govern and secure this, then again, it's another recipe for disaster. So I think these are a few things that everyone has to think of, irrespective of the size of the organization or what maturity level you are in. So understand that maturity. Don't try to fall into the bandwagon of bringing technology just for the namesake. These are buzzwords. Try and understand your maturity and try and adopt technology that is relevant to you and your organization. And then I think success will follow.
Absolutely fantastic. Very well and very comprehensive and thought through. Mr. Pereira, thanks for sharing. You talked about long-term vision and short-term roadmap. You also talked about selecting and solving the problem instead of just jumping on a technology. Very well thought of. You also talked about defining a roadmap and identifying some of the champions, because you want to make it sustainable. It's not a journey, or it's not a short-term step you're taking, it's a long-term journey, right? And while keeping these broad, perspective in mind, you need to, we need to be cognizant of that 18 months of ROI, which you highlighted. You have to be quick as well and see where the immediate ROI is, because it's a fine balance between these long-term and broad vision versus quick steps to be taken. So, appreciate your thought and well-balanced, view. Thanks, Mr. Pereira, once again. This round to the audience, as I said, was taken a little more than we had planned, but I think it was an amazing to see and view, to see and learn the perspective. So we'll move to the second round, which is panel discussion. And if you must be observing, we have kept no slide agenda so that we can have this interactive session. So I'm very thankful to panelists for not using slide. So we'll make it more interactive going forward. So I would request Mr. 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏 in terms of sharing his views on how he sees the AI adoption is going to happen next 5 years. And when you share that perspective, maybe you can talk about top 3 or 4 use cases which you feel will be mostly adopted in next 3 to 5 years. So any perspective on that, Mr. 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏?
Sure, Shah, thanks. I think it's an important question to understand what we are going to see in next 3 to 5 years. I would, of course, refer to some of the reports that have been done by the IDC and the PwC. So AI is going to be a game changer as a technology, sure. And with the already mentioned here, so with the IoT and IIoT pumping petabytes of data, the possibilities of application is enormous. Like I said, every industry will be touched by AI. And what is being projected is that not just at the use case level, but overall, AI is expected to add close to 10 trillion to overall GDP by 2025. It is, as a technology, this is a pretty revolutionary, and you can, in terms of who will benefit out of it, of course, that's an important question. It is primarily China leading here, above US, and US comes next. So China roughly around 7 trillion would be coming out of China, who would be benefiting out of it, then US, then Europe, and then comes APAC. So what are the key use cases? It would be primarily productivity and quality. Yeah, these would be the primary results or the use cases that would contribute maybe 70% of the numbers or the trillion that we are talking about by 2025. And manufacturing would be close to 1 trillion by 2025 is what we are looking at. Then of course we have other use cases that we already probably seeing in terms of communication, consumer goods, wearables. So this would follow. In terms of what you mentioned about the use cases, I mentioned about the productivity and quality. Again, it will be in the manufacturing context. It will again be how you can improve your quality of the product, how you can improve your operational efficiency in your production line, in terms of how you can predict possible maintenance failures, how you can improve your large assets that you're running, how you can save cost by not having downtimes in them. And beyond that, it is also possible that you could also, outside the manufacturing, you also have possibilities of forecasting your product demand with the data that you would be collecting from different sources. In terms of inventory management, forecasting the price, even this is an important use case that we have seen in our Bosch Center of AI. We are getting similar. These are the key use cases that we have seen across our plants, across our customers. And I believe this would be forming majority of the use cases that would contribute to the numbers that I was talking about.
Sure. Makes sense. And I was very interested to hear for that pricing thing. I mean, operational efficiency, quality, and asset downtime definitely are the three areas within manufacturing. And using this information, if you are better placed in your pricing on a continuous basis, I think that makes you competitive. So it's a good combination of operational and pricing together. Thanks. My next goes to Mr. Singhal. In terms of, while we are talking about AI and, ML and RPA and XR, the extended reality. So where does automation fits with respect to these different technologies, and how do you see automation growing and working well with these different technologies, Mr. Singhal?
Yeah, thanks, Sharad. What I feel that automation is the core around which these technologies are going to get synced up between the process and the analytics. So when we talk about the process, automation takes up and enables the manufacturer to ensure that he is able to have a quality output, faster time to market, and they're able to drive regulatory compliances, and they're scalable while they're sustainable. With this, the combination of AI along with RPA and ML enables all the amalgamations of elements from around to get together. So talking about the market of automation, as you looked at, so we are estimating that the digital market, I would say, I'm combining all this into digital, the growth of digital is 4 to 5 times than the growth of the automation market now. So automation has been, and that is where the convergence of IT and OT have started happening.
Right.
We have a 20,000 crore worth of automation market, which is growing at a CAGR of roughly 10-11% pre-COVID. But now with the COVID coming in and things changing more from physical to digital, and people investing into, end-to-end, especially on automation, which has become their priority, we are expecting the growth of this market to be 14 to 15% for next 2 to 3 years. While I say automation is 14 to 15%, the digital market is going to be around 40 to 45% growing in next 2 to 3 years with the combination of all the technologies combined together. And the biggest investments are coming in the software, in the MES, in the high-end areas where we are giving analytics built around data which is being collected, along with cybersecurity and that.
Right. And just a quick follow-up on that, since there were some questions about it being expensive, and we also got some prior questions around the ROI for a company who is planning to adopt automation. Any insight, a quick insight on that how companies can think of?
That is one of the most critical thing which we should be addressing, and we should let people know. Expensiveness is always in the mind and is a perception which is being created based upon the initial investment, the cost. Companies are now going from a CapEx model to OpEx model for enabling the manufacturers to adopt digitization. So there are year-bound processes which people are now giving to them. The cost is not only of the CapEx, and the returns on investment are not only about how much saving you are getting from it directly. There are benefits of quality. There are benefits of reduced downtime. There are benefits of increased usage of the lifetime cycle of the products which are being used, the machines which are being used, and multiple more. So in nutshell, as rightly said, Mr. Pereira also, if the ROI is more than 18 months, it doesn't matter. It become redundant. So certainly it is less than 18 months in most of the cases that we see. And the cost of adopting it is very low.
Yeah, and as you said, the combination and the ratio of CapEx versus OpEx is accordingly being changed, and it is helping organizations to adopt it fast, right? And if I continue with that, I mean, because there are certain questions related to organizations being struggling. So the question to Mr. Krishna is that what are some of the basic tools using which an organization can start its long journey of RPA adoption? What do you think could be potential initial steps, Mr. Krishna? I think you are on mute, Mr. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was not programmed to switch off my mute. I'm still human, so I make mistakes, right? So I think one of the challenges in running an RPA program is identifying the right processes, right? And also how can we scale it, right? Where can we get? Because a lot of the ROI or a lot of this financial calculation is based on the multiplier effect, right? That says I do this and this does for my 5 transactions, it does this. I do a million zillion transactions, so this is what I will have, right? But when you go beyond those 5 transactions, the zillion transactions don't follow the same happy flow and standard flow. And therefore it requires a lot more of customization, reprogramming, relooking at tools. RPA doesn't work, so you need to have a bit of machine learning. Machine learning needs a lot of community data, and the community data or large data libraries are not available, so there are errors that creep in and so on and so forth. So I think in the beginning, we have to be very clear that what do we want to do, right? Let us be clear that we want to improve the quality of human life and human work, right? Like we did in manufacturing, or like we did in cleaning, right? Or we did in scavenging elsewhere. We want to improve the quality of the human life to move away from repetitive, standard, right, and boring tasks to do something better, which is to use the technology. So that's what we want to do. We want to improve the quality of human life. So therefore, if there is a set of activity that the organization does, and there are within that a percentage of activity which are rule-based, transactional, repetitive, predictable, I think we need to focus on that and eliminate it. And therefore, we need to have a message of what we call the human in the loop. So the technology and the human work together, right? Techno-functional resources. So there is always a case that we will say 70 to 80% we automate, which is the standard happy flow if I use from a process. The rest, we let the human being do it, right? It's just slightly value added, the exceptions. And when we have that mindset in place, and then we say we want to start small, but quickly industrialize and move ahead, right? So that vision is required. If that vision is not available, and if you not have an addressable population of several hundred employees or employees equivalent of work that can be automated, I think we should rethink on how we want to automate. Because there are many small size organizations get bitten by the bug that my neighbor is doing automation, so I also need to do. And then they find that the ROI is not good, and they are the bad apples in the system because they were never a good candidate for automation because of the size. So I think we need to now have that challenging conversation with small organizations.
Right. Sorry to interrupt, but I was seeing some of the questions that do we really need big ROI tools and those systems, or is that like we started with Excel also? So is there any small tools or low cost investments as well where an organization can start? What is your view on that?
Certainly, I think end of the day, not to demean RPA, but RPA is a version beyond Excel, VB, right? And there are and those people who are from IT know that there are enough automation tools we did in the past, right? ABAP coding in SAP is still automation in some way, right? So there are many other options available that you can do. Auto IT, which is a freeware, which is available, you can use that. Python is a freeware that you can use. So people can look at that. The idea is, what are we trying to do? Are we doing automation for the sake of automation? Or are we doing it to improve the quality of outcome and improve the quality of work that our human workforce is doing? Based on which we can certainly pick up all these resources. Plus, you have the front-end bots and the back-end bots, right? I think maybe some of the tool companies have spoken about that, which is the whole concept of democratization. So if there is a bot for me at the front end, and I think it's usable there, then the whole ROI looks very different, right? And the whole cost structure looks different. IT protocols are very different. But then it's mirroring my ID, so the risk is on me, so it's okay. Right?
Okay, great. So very well
Does
said.
that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah, thanks. So let's move to some of the real life cases from the industry, representatives here. Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗿, would you like to share some of your experiences, especially when it comes to applying these technologies in process manufacturing environment?
Well, thanks for asking these questions to me, and specifically in manufacturing. If you talk about the manufacturing, process manufacturing, or I'll be talking about, it is not the discrete and auto, and where it is a continuous process manufacturing, or we are dealing with a lot of hydrocarbons or the chemicals, and there comes a lot of challenges also for us, or the technology, though it is available in the market in other domain, we cannot deploy those things in our environment without modifying those things.
Absolutely.
Before going to the example use cases, I'd like to bring some challenges. Is that if there's the device or equipment, automation things is available also, if you'd like to bring it to in our environment, we need to see the hazardous environment applicability of the devices. Sometimes, to give you one example, we work in a chemical and petrochemical and oil and gas industry. Environment is very highly inflammable gases are there. Yep. So if you'd like to bring any technology that works with battery, and it's a big challenge for us. So we need to have a certification for that, and that should be available so that it does not create any spark, it does not create something. So that's another challenges for our industry. So, however, bearing all these things, this increases a lot of cost for us. One more thing that we're talking about a lot of return on investment and the cost. I think the fellow panelist talked on these things, which is a very important one. There's another aspect that I would like to bring in is the sustainability. Even if today I may not have a 18 months or 1 year payback period, but to make my business or to make my operation sustainable and future-proof, I need to start adopting those things, even if it is not paying me in 18 months. Maybe it will pay me after 2 years when I will be facing the competition from the different sides, and I will be at the forefront of catering those countries. So that is the one thing that I wanted to bring, other than the ROI also. So about the use cases of in process industry, there are many use cases that we are doing. Some of the use cases that I think about the process industry, not only for my industry, is a similar continuous process industry. I would like to give one example. In our process industry, the quality, maybe in many of the other the industry also, the quality is not measured continuously in real time. So I may send the quality, the produced material to the laboratory manually. And once I get the result of the laboratory, and based on that information, my operation running my plant. Now, because this the information is not available to the operating people in real time, they are running our plant at a condition maybe blindly. I say normally it is running the plant blindly without knowing at what quality parameter I am producing, whether that product I'll be able to sell into the market or not. So this is a big challenge for industry, where the real-time analyzers are not available in the market, or technology is not available, or if the technology is available also, it is so cost prohibitive, we cannot adopt it in our industry. So there comes of AI. And we know that even the 10 years back, we started using the 10 or 25 years back in our industry, started using advanced process control and real-time optimization. And those technologies are also doing the similar things, but they are doing in for a very specific section of the plant.
Sure.
They cannot go and take out the disturbances that comes out from my market side or supplier side. So the AI technology now using the deep learning, all these algorithms, when we have the data, we develop those technology and we implement those things in real time, so that operating people get the this quality parameter specifically in real time and run the plant optimally, not just in the safely, optimally also. So that's the one type of example that we can come up with many other exampple, but
I think this is a very relevant one. As in the beginning, I was talking about as advanced process quality, for which Hitachi did a project for a tire manufacturer. And our team was able to predict the quality well in advance, basis the raw material quality and the process parameters. So these are the things, as you rightly said, probably we can say they are not matured at 10 to 10 scale, but they are coming up, especially the kind of environment you talked about where offline quality inspection is happening. So very well pointed out by you, Mr. 𝗥𝗺, and that is what I was looking in terms of your specific industry. Moving to Mr. Pereira, as we can understand, you talked about operating model, right? And being a leader, you understand that there is a challenge between managing a business transformation initiative and a digital transformation initiative, right? I mean, both of them target the business outcome and objective, but obviously their style, their content, their intention, and their journey may be different. So what is your view in terms of creating a flexible operating model, bringing every right constituents and make that work both for business transformation in parallel with the digital initiatives? So what is your view on that?
So I'll take a little bit of a tangent. When you said business transformation and digital transformation, for me, business transformation is backed by digital transformation. It's not two different things. If you don't digitalize to transform your business, then forget it. Then I think it's not worthy of an investment, right?
Absolutely.
Because you saw now what happened during the pandemic. and you will see this more and more in the future, there have been a lot of organizations that missed out on this trick and then have become extinct. Right? In the past, there are multiple examples. You can go to any business school and you'll study this. So digital transformation is the key to making your business sustainable and successful, right? And that is backing your business transformation. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗿𝗀𝗺 actually mentioned, and if you look at the number of use cases, I can go on and on because there are so many use cases that you can talk about. But the fundamental thing is we should not take a siloed approach. And I see this happening everywhere. What I mean by a siloed approach is you look at a process, but you take a piecemeal. You don't look at the end-to-end, right? And what happens here is you start doing transformation in one area, and then you realize another area you did not consider. And then you spend more money to go and re-engineer that again to make sure that the other area is also optimized. Right? And this is what keeps our job going, because in one of the forums when I was speaking to a university, one of the students, undergraduate student, asked me, said, "Hey, once you've automated all your processes, then what do you do?" Yeah. Then does your job become redundant, or what happens? Let's say you have multiple RPA bots running, all your processes are lean, and it's a very interesting question, because again, our jobs are lying around the fact that there are a lot of inefficiencies, right? If you look at that. So when you look at business transformation, correct. Yeah. So when you look at business transformation, for me, it was more about thinking about the bigger picture and looking at, does your business help you sort of achieve the goals and the targets that your company has visioned for yourself, right? Why I say that is, Daimler, for example, we are a large organization in multiple different continents. When we look at the India business, it's relatively a new plant. We're roughly about 8 years old. So a lot of the processes, if you look at our factory, is very, very, more advanced than some of the other plants, because we were able to adopt these technologies from the beginning itself. So when I have to automate, or when I have to digitally transform, my job in India becomes a lot easier than a lot of my other colleagues would face in another place, or in another industry for that matter of fact. Yeah. Right? So you have to understand that, again, what is the current state of your organization, and then apply these technologies. Because if you look at the amount of RPA bots running for me, they're very different, and my operating models are different. For example, we have outsourced a lot of our, back-end support, right? Well, if you take a perfect example of IT, right? You have your priority 1, priority 2, priority 3 tickets raised by the business, right? And now what we have is an RPA bot classifying, because sometimes the business makes a mistake of tagging a P3 incident as a P1 incident. Now, this is a very mundane thing, right? And you can't expect the business to understand what is priority 1, what is priority 2 and 3. It will take some time to create this awareness, but these are simple things that we can do. Now, this is not going to be a game changer. It's not going to transform my business overall. I might save a little bit of cost. I might be a little bit more efficient, but it's not going to transform. Right? So the clear differentiation between digitally transforming to supplement your business transformation versus, hygiene factors have to be clearly understood. Yeah. If you don't understand that, then again, your transformation journey becomes very vague. So I think that's why I took a tangent off of what the question you said. And I thought I should share this point of view so that the other, panelists, as well as the guests who have joined the session today, can at least take a clue out of this and adopt it to their needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree in terms of being digital transformation, being a part of your overall business transformation. If I paraphrase my point, it was more in terms of how to create that operating model, which is flexible and, comprehensive enough to be able to move forward. So because you talked about operating model, so what are the top 2 or 3 things which you consider while creating that operating model is what I was intending.
Okay, so when I consider my operating model, I spoke about sustainability 1, but I also looked at the right skills and what do we do in-house and what do we do with a partner.
Okay.
Right? It doesn't make sense for me now to do everything in-house. We are IT, we want to be that, but there are areas where we lack some expertise, where we would want to learn from partners from outside. And there are things where it's a one-time or a two-time, use case where it makes sense to go out. So in my operating model, I look at the entire ecosystem, and then I see what are the right skill sets I need to consistently sustain that business model or that operating model. And then the second portion is, how do I get this adopted or this change management down to the last level?
And that is
it doesn't
why,
matter what it is. That's the only thing.
Perfect. And that is why you talked about the train the trainer model, so that it is sustainable, which goes on a right. Perfect.
Correct.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Pereira. I'd like to take up one live question from Dinesh, and I'll leave it to whosoever wants to pick it up based on the experience related to this. So Dinesh is asking, with the adoption of RPA and AI getting wider in the industry, how is the security aspect taken care of? And are there specific security protocols and standards for RPA and robust firewalls built? So would anybody wants to pick this? Maybe Krishna, if I can, in terms of security aspects.
A lot of these RPA tools come with bank grade security protocol, right? And that's what they advertise, right? They got those bank grade security protocols. So therefore, I think there is a already added comfort from that point of view. And they have, over the last 3-4 years, upgraded them. The challenge that one may face in when you go more into cognitive and AI is you are using a lot of open source and community library data. So you might seem to be becoming a little more vulnerable from that point of view. And therefore, companies discourage you from using, 2-3 years ago, there was a total discouragement from using Python, right? I think it was a no-no. I think now, because the tools are getting upgraded and our understanding of the tool getting improved, I think we're willing to look at Python, right? Python, now many companies are using them. So I think it's a bit of an evolution in terms of both the products getting bank-grade security protocols coming in, and organizations also understanding how we can use open source. The interesting thing that's happened in COVID is the whole focus has moved to cloud, right? People who are highly skeptical of even private cloud, forget about public cloud, are now rapidly adopting cloud, right? And you see that heavily. In my previous organization's experience, we could redo our whole RPA setup within hours because we were on the cloud. And many other clients of the same organization who are supporting us struggled for days and weeks, and some could not even manage because they were all on the premises, on the server, and some people had to physically carry those servers to somebody's house to get those bots running, right? So therefore, the power of cloud was very high, and cloud comes with those security protocols and also possibly some vulnerability. My personal view, I think there's a cost and there's a risk and there's a benefit, and we need to accept some risk, a percentage of risk of cybersecurity and others, and move ahead with it, right? Robin Hood was looting travelers, and maybe there is somebody who's stealing data in a cyber world, right? So this new Robin Hood who's doing this, right? So we accepted Robin Hood at that point of time. So we need to accept some data loss and threat here. It's a cost of doing business. So we continuously keep building our security protocols around that.
Yeah, absolutely. And any view, Mr. Pereira, on this in terms of while you're implementing some of these use cases on the ground, did you face some issue with this, or how did you resolve them? Any experience?
I wouldn't say we had any major issues as such. Not that at least I can recall. But what we did was we have a very strict or stringent process to follow when it comes to data governance as well as cybersecurity. And cybersecurity, not just from a system perspective, but we also look at our shop floor security, right? When we look at OT. So there are different things that we have to go through, and we do not compromise. There are a few things that we follow within Time India Commercial Vehicles. We do not compromise on quality at any cost. And also at the same time, we do not compromise on doing the right thing, which means it might take a little bit longer, but take the time, make sure you have everything in place so that we can reap the benefits much later. So that's why before we started out, we said, and it's not you do it one time and you stop. You have to continuously evolve. You will need to continuously review and see, because every day things are changing. So for us, we laid the foundation really well, which is why we were able to sort of use those governance models, those processes, and then build on top of it. So I think Mr. Ramachandran really summarized it well. And to answer your question, we, at least in Daimler India Commercial Vehicles, did not face any such issues till now.
Perfect. Okay. Next question is with respect to larger scale of deployment of IIoT. So, Mr. Chandrasekhar, I would like to seek your view on that. How companies can really, going beyond just point solutions and adopting it as a larger scale.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the question. Like I think many of the panelists mentioned, so the change as part of digital transformation is a big and long term, and it has to have a long term vision. And every piece, the technology, the processes, the people, everything has to fit to address that. Yeah. So the scaling your IoT solution requires foresight into future, what you need to do for planning today for your current challenges and opportunities. So once you have a smaller set of IoT projects where you have the results, you need to understand how the improvements were achieved, why and how it succeeded. And then you have to define, even though it's beneficial to adopt generic industry benchmarks, but define your own benchmarks on ROI, because the factors that go into arriving at an ROI would change from a particular organization or in the industry. So you need to make sure that whether your definition of ROI is met. And when it comes to challenges, you will, of course, the typical challenges would be you'll have to deal with a lot of legacy assets and software solutions. It is not going to be easy. It calls for overhaul of all of them, and you can't do it at once because you have to run your current operations and businesses. And the second problem would be that how you would normally have point solutions, like you mentioned. When we do our own inventory within Bosch, we have thousands of applications and softwares running across. Even though we have a central IT organization trying to standardize, you always have this challenge happening there. And similarly, people also implement their own solutions on their own in smaller scale. That's the challenge that we face even in IT as well as old. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Then comes the non-alignment in your IT and OT cycle times. Yeah, the priorities would be different. IT, we try to standardize. It's certain level possible, but OT is always a challenge because somebody in a remote plant, they might be running on their own, or a particular service maintenance, they would run their own applications. They would never synchronize. And for a bigger digital transformation, I think everything has to come on one platform. I think this is a bigger target where all your data through IoT flows into a big, we call it data lake, right? So everything has to flow into a common pool of information that could be structured, that could be governed. And then you pull your applications are built on it, pulling this data for whatever use case that you need. But you need to have a homogeneous and streamlined data. And this is always a dream that everybody chases. It's not easy to achieve, but that's going to be the challenge.
Sure.
So some of the key success factor would be like you need to define a clear process roadmap and stick to that, as part of what you have started, and then try to digitize parts, step by step, and make sure that you have good, reliable, and secure digital production platforms are there. Yeah. And the third one would be that please, you have to build an ecosystem where you bring all the stakeholders, whether it's consultants, your business process owners, IT associates, your own all other employees. Everybody has to be aligned. Engagement with all of them is very important here. And then at the end of it, all of them have to work together, whether it's, they might have different targets, but eventually they'll all have to work together, collaborate, and follow a systematic, focused approach that has got a clear near-term and long-term objectives, to scale your IoT implementation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in terms of scaling it up, as I'm hearing from most of us and all of us actually, is that having a broad vision, bringing components along and have the right governance and governance model and operating model I mean, you can take steps which may be incremental and baby steps to start with, but the overall scenario, understanding what you want to achieve and bringing every component along together is a very important thing. Having a clear roadmap is very important. And from that perspective, my next question goes to Mr. Singhal. Based on your experience, how do you see that? How many companies are really taking this as a very strategic approach and having the digital strategy roadmap? Because like many of us are saying, if you have an just pointed solution and very focused and narrow approach, it is not going to help you a lot. So how do you see it coming up for different industries?
Yeah, very relevant question, Sharad, at this time. I see that there's a need, there's an intent of many industries to get into that approach. And if I break it into different segments, MSMEs, I see, are adopting IIoT much better now as compared to what was happening a few years back. So they have understood to stay competitive, to stay in terms of their ability to export with the qualities which they are creating, as well as to attract manpower and to retain the manpower. IoT has become very, very important for them to sustain and to implement with. And I've seen almost in all the segments, whether it is in the metals, mining, minerals, CPG, life sciences, everywhere, the adoption of IoT has started increasing year over year. To talk about some of the industries which are into the oil and gas, which are the process industries and which are into food and beverages and pharma, adoption rates are much higher as compared to the core industries. But nevertheless, other industries are gearing up and accelerating. Generally, when I see and when we meet the business owners of these organizations, they just ask that we want to go there, we want to do this. Tell me what is in it for me. And that is where the dialogue starts. That how can I really, you talk about it, but we talk about trust. Is there something which is really coming out, or this is only words and this is only PowerPoint? So when we are able to showcase them the real advantages of the smart factories, the factories of future which have been built by adopting IoT, this creates a good use case understanding for them, and they start looking confident to adopt it. We take them to our Bangalore factory and our Hyderabad factories, which are state-of-the-art modernized factories with IoT implementation, and they are actually eye-openers, because we're not only saving energy, we optimize the process, we optimize the assets and human assets combined together for the process, and have showcased efficiency improvements at the end of the year for last 2 years as the real data points shown to them. So I see that showing them with examples really helps people to adopt this technology much faster.
Makes sense, yeah. And thanks for putting it together in such a nice way. In fact, given there are many questions about the post-pandemic scenario as well. So I would like to check with Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗻, what is his view in terms of, how this adoption of technologies will happen post-pandemic scenario, and does it make a good sense to rather adopt and be better in terms of readiness for future, and how do you see the companies in your industry going towards that? Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗻, you're again on mute, I think.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking the questions. If you see till January 2020, there is a lot of market research publications, and they are actually projecting that this Industry 4 adoption in India was going to be increasing for next 5 years with a CAGR of around 13 to 14%. And it was same rate. It was actually, this adoption was happening for the last 4 to 5 years. And however, the pandemic situation, the situation now has become, for every industry, is a survival first, and then to take the adoption of those things. And though these are the technologies that who already adopted those technologies, they are actually in a very good the situation to manage their operation to the highest level with the minimum number of people in the shop floor. However, at this time, this adoption and spending is almost stopped, you can say. And whatever we are adopted, that we are using it, but the situation actually forced everybody to started thinking that these technologies are not for fancy. These technologies like automation, the basic automation, it has become a necessary for us to survive. And so though this the spending or adoption rate the reduced a little bit, and everybody is actually very bullish on this the aspect that as soon as we are coming out of this situation, we will be actually accelerating in much faster rate than what we are doing before pandemic to complete the adoption, because we don't know. This is the one situation that we faced. We don't know what are the many other things is going to come up in future, and these are the technology that is going to save us in this situation. And this is not the only me optimistic about it, but the lot of researchers. I was actually listening to the IMF meeting, some speech on that, and there everybody is just telling that, okay, in this pandemic, it has reduced a little bit, but it is going to pick up in end of 2020 financial year, and that will be much faster rate.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So I think this pandemic, in a way, might be treated as an opportunity for revisiting many of the things, and because these are the certain situations when you become more cognizant about your inefficiencies, bring them out and work as a team, and this is the situation which we can leverage to become more smarter and ready for the future, right? That's what I'm hearing. I think we are 12:55, so maybe we can take up one more question before we summarize. Let me quickly see from the audience, or else we can go to the the list of questions which was sent prior. I think many of these we have covered already. How do you see the incremental distributive? Okay. This is interesting. So how to start? This question is from Jyoti. How to start predictive maintenance with limited data or lack of failure data due to preventive maintenance? From real life experience, anyone wants to pick up?
I can take up this question when you were talking about the predictive, the shift from preventive to predictive. That's what is the actual benefit, one of the real benefit which we get in. And it's not very, when we say how to start, it doesn't mean that we have to invest a lot. We have to have some sensors which gives the real-time input for some of these parameters which are important for that equipment to be maintained, and then it is analytics. So we have implemented this within our own factory in Bangalore and Hyderabad, which I talked about, and now we can even predict the life and the requirements for maintenance to come up after 1 month and maybe beyond that. The life of the bearing, life of the motors, life of mechanical equipments, they can be very well predicted by implementation of few sensors which are not expensive, but they help us to change the mode of maintenance to when needed rather than as scheduled. It's very important we should do the maintenance only if needed. Why do you need to maintain equipment if it is not requiring that maintenance? It helps in improving the uptime of the equipment as well as reducing the dependencies from many factors and reducing the inventories.
Right. And another aspect, I believe, what I'm sensing from her question is that when we do not have a large data of failure in past, and you are planning to implement a AI model, then how to manage that, right? I think that's another aspect of that question. I think Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗻𝗺 has some view.
Yes, let me, these are the situations in most of the cases when we start trying to adopt the AI for different use cases. And one of the solution that we also adopted, and I think that is can be a solution for this, is making a hybrid a model of fundamental and data-based, AI-based. And we may not be having the lot, even if we are today, we deploy some IoT-based sensor to collect the data, we may not have the historical data to do the failure prediction, all these things. So what we can do is to develop a fundamental model of part of it, and from there create several scenarios, and with that data and with whatever the minimum data we have available, apply the AI model on these things, develop one thing. And we did it in few of the cases in our process, and this can be one of the way forward to go.
Sure. And I have seen my personal experience when we were implementing a predictive quality solution to a paper manufacturing company. To be honest, it started with 71% accuracy. And over a period of 4.5 months, when we had enough data, it went to close to 89 or 90% even. So it takes its own time to mature. But your point is valid, Jyoti, that in the absence of data, it takes some time to mature the model and get the results. So with that, since we are on the top of the hour, I would like to just quickly summarize, and I request panelists to feel free to add. I think we all understand that, like Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗻𝗺 said, a very broader perspective of that the GDP contribution of manufacturing is reducing. And there is a logical reason that probably manufacturers are not seeing value, and that is why shifting to other, and other businesses like services. How to save that is basically to make our processes efficient and adopt digital technologies. The key concern is that, do we really need a lot of investment? Will we get an ROI? Will we get the return in time? I think what mostly we discuss that there are certain ways that it is a recommended approach, that we have a broader vision. We have operating model, the governance model, and security concerns have in mind. Create a clear layout and a strategic roadmap. And once you do that, you don't need to spend too much upfront. A good combination of OPEX and CAPEX ratio can still help you to get the required ROI which you are looking. But given that you have a proper digital strategy with clearly laid out business outcomes that you want to achieve, you can still go ahead with small amount of investment, adopt tools which are not very expensive, and lead to this journey, which is very exciting for all of us, to take India to the next level and make it 𝗏𝗵𝗿𝗀. So that's how I summarize all these discussions into few sentences, and I'll request others to feel free before we close it. Any last point?
Just to add, Sharath, we
Yes.
talk about the Internet of Things. If there's no things, we have nothing to connect to, nothing to get data from, nothing to build analytics on. So things would be the core fundamental aspect of the entire digital transformation. Everything else is in zeros and ones.
Right. And remember, manufacturing is Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. So, I would like to thank all of you. I understand, given the difficult situation we are running, we all are very busy to sustain, to grow, and you took time to share your perspective in a very constructive manner. And hopefully we delivered a constructive and useful session for the audience as well as all of us. So appreciate your participation. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
school.
Thanks, all.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Bye.
With that, I would like to thank all of our panelists for taking out time to share their experience and learnings. And it has indeed been a very insightful session. Now, I request the audience to take a moment to complete the poll to provide feedback on today's session and share your ideas for future ones. Your feedback is extremely important to us to bring more and more such sessions to you. Details on joining the Interchange platform for deeper discussions will soon be on your screens. And we will also be a part of the email that you will receive after this session. I encourage you all to join and engage the like-minded community on Interchange, and look out for the details on upcoming sessions on our IIoT India website and social media pages. Do not forget to join our Interchange community for continuing the conversations and dialogues spinning from today's sessions. We look forward to seeing you in Interchange after this session and having you at the future sessions. Do not forget to submit your poll. And take care and have a good day. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thanks, Amit.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.